So I'm here today chatting with friend from stream, Oleg.
Hello.
Um, so today we're talking about the situation right now in Israel Palestine, the current most recent attacks from Hamas and the response from Israel. So first, just so you're currently in Israel,
Yes, for the last couple of decades.
yeah. And I think you said that you're safe, your family's safe, for
Well,
the
for
most part.
yeah, for now at least. Who knows
Yeah.
what's gonna happen? But
Mm-hmm.
like, hopefully, like, knock on wood,
Yeah.
everything's gonna be fine.
Yeah. Were you um, were you close enough to the areas that were attacked that you could kind of hear things directly, or were there were air raids? Did you go
Actually,
for shelter?
yeah, we're actually somewhat close. Like,
Mm.
I've heard like planes go by and like
Mm-hmm.
very distant explosions.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
How did you feel during those moments? Like, um, did you think did you think initially this is going to be some big thing, or this is going to be not such a big thing, or
Initially, yeah, I didn't really think of much of it. Like I was like when I was I think it was like 4 or 5 last time. During
mm,
the Gulf War. I remember like wearing a gas mask, like I was a little
wow,
kid, and the gas mask is like had a long, uh, not a pipe. I don't know what you call it. Like basically,
like the
like it had
filter,
a long, yeah, and like I was very little, and I was like
yeah.
pretending to be an elephant. Like I was too little to understand what was going on.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was before I spoke any English. Also,
Mm-hmm. Oh, this is the matcha, by the way. I
ah,
put in some oat milk and some honey, kind of a
very
latte and some
nice.
ice.
It looks very nice. I'd like to try it.
It's good. I
Yeah,
can,
maybe
yeah.
I think maybe Amazon has like a,
Mm,
what do you call it? A
yeah.
thing.
Yeah, I think you could definitely get some on Amazon. I can show you how to like mix it up because it can clump a lot.
Ah,
So I ended up getting there's like a Japanese traditional preparation kit where you kind of like whisk it together. That's what I was sending you the photos of. The whole process.
I
Um,
heard like somebody once told me that the Japanese are really diligent with it, and
hmm.
in some extreme cases where they if they don't do it right, they commit seppuku, like harakiri.
Well, it still tastes good even if if you don't do it perfectly. Don't. It's okay. Just try again.
Yeah.
um, yeah, and so um, I don't know how much you followed, kind of like U.S. response, or I know there's been a lot of these moments that have gone viral from kind of pro Palestinian rallies in the United States and in I think Australia, where there are
Uh,
people like cheering, cheering for murder, basically.
yeah, I've
Um,
seen in there's not a creator, like an activist from England who I follow.
mm,
He actually went to confront people and
mm,
basically had the mob like chase him,
mm,
and like the police had to. Like, they chased him to a restaurant, and the police just stood between him and the restaurant and the
mm,
mob.
mm-hmm,
And that was like he didn't do anything to anybody. Like he basically confronted them about them supporting murder, and
mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. It's this is some of what I was saying to Wick when I was talking to him yesterday. Is that um, I expect anybody who is saying anything on social media for the first few days after something like this happens, I pretty much I'm not interested in what they're going to have to say. Anybody who's going to comment immediately, it's likely to be some kind of reflexive, probably not thoughtful response.
Yeah.
And um, I was a little bit surprised, I guess, at how graphic some of that response was. Um,
The, Speaking of graphic, like
yeah.
the Hamas footage, which they themselves
Mm,
like released, was
yeah.
like kind of horrifying.
Yeah.
I made the mistake of watching some of
Mm,
it, like people getting set on fire,
oh God.
the,
Yeah.
hitting people with axes. Like the part with the axe, like it was fortunately
Mm,
blurred where when they hit the person. But yeah, that like it was not pretty.
yeah. Yeah. That's horrific. I saw a little bit of what was on YouTube, but it was mostly just um, some of the footage of like the flying machines and like shooting at cameras to deactivate like the listening posts around Gaza to make it more difficult for the IDF to know what the Hamas movements were.
Mhm.
Um, I didn't see the more graphic stuff. Um,
Yeah, and I probably shouldn't have, but
yeah.
yeah. It's actually before I saw somebody on Facebook warned us, but like I was too curious.
Mm,
Yeah. Like, he said that he couldn't sleep. Like
mm.
same for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I couldn't sleep afterwards.
um, how do you like? What's the kind of sense in Israel? So my expectation, just based on what I've watched, the little bits of news stories and kind of analysis coming out, is that Hamas kind of blew their wad in terms of what they had prepared. They came in, did as much damage, killed as many people as they could, and then are expecting just to be retaliated on by Israel, and maybe potentially some kind of ground response from Israel, and then fighting kind of in the streets in kind of close quarters.
Mhm.
Is there a sense that you or other people you might know in Israel feel like maybe there's going to be more coming from Hamas, or do you think that was kind of they
I
did everything they could all at once?
I think that well, first of all, there's Hezbollah managed to
Mm-hmm.
get in from the north,
Yeah.
which is like they were emboldened by that. Like, and there's people who said that there's terrorists in the cities in the
Mm.
north, and with the Hamas, like they were contained basically. There's still corpses
Mm-hmm.
being found in the places around.
Yeah.
Like how many days has it been? Like 5 days, 4 days? There's still dead
Four
people
four
being
days. Yeah.
found. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's for us it's 5 days. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, there's still people. Like, there's like there was a report of 40 children, like, including babies, that were killed, and some of them were beheaded.
Mm.
At first, it was some skepticism, which I guess is justified. That's a very extreme
Mm-hmm.
claim, but it was verified. Which,
Mm.
like, obviously, if there's any pictures, I'm not gonna look for that. What I've
Yeah.
seen was just beds and cribs like covered in blood, and
Mm.
that was enough for me.
Yeah.
So yeah.
What's the atmosphere like in terms of um, like how many are people in Israel obviously from what you can see from your perspective, I don't expect you to have like a full picture of what everybody in Israel thinks and feels. But are people
Mm.
feeling like, um, just um, hopefully the IDF can kind of ensure that there's no additional incursions, whatever's happening up north, that it isn't going further afield, or Hezbollah isn't able to infiltrate in, um, or how many people are kind of calling um, for Gaza to be leveled, for Hamas to be eradicated, or how many people are saying, there's already been a lot of violence. We need some kind of ceasefire. Um, which of
Yeah,
those which of those things are you
uh,
hearing?
sorry, I just got into one of the Telegram groups, which I
Uh,
probably shouldn't have, and saw some stuff.
uh-huh.
Oh God, there's yeah. What are you saying? Sorry.
No, it's okay. um, I guess, yeah, I'm curious what kind of responses you're hearing from people around you of, just kind of fearing for personal safety about the situation ongoing, that Hezbollah might infiltrate further from the north, and just hoping that
Well,
the IDF can cut them off, or find them, or just make sure that they're not coming in,
well,
versus, yeah.
from what I've read, like there was a bunch of them already killed,
Mm-hmm.
uh, so they haven't gotten that far.
Mm-hmm.
And there's even yeah, second. There's like a website where it says like they like, moment to moment they give like small
Mm.
reports.
Interesting. Like a Israeli, like, governmental run website, or.
And no, it's like it's an independent website
Mm.
from what I understand. It's
Mm.
Ynet, I think it's called.
Hmm.
I don't think it's governed by the government.
Mm.
It has like at the bottom it says they give their sponsors and
Mm. Interesting.
uh,
It's some third party organization that's just kind of, aggregating whatever information is available, and
yeah,
updating. Um,
and they seem to, well, they don't really mention Hezbollah in the north much. I
mm,
don't think they're much of a threat right now.
um, and so then the question that I'm curious about is, from the people around you in Israel, how much do you hear of, in one direction or another, we need to, um, level Gaza or eradicate Hamas, versus, okay, we really need to, have political leaders from the Palestinians, from the Israelis, form some sort of, ceasefire immediately. Like, which are you hearing either of those directions?
Well, the ceasefire, I know that the ceasefire was offered by Hamas, like directly after the
Mm-hmm.
massacres happened, but
Yeah.
I think the train has passed there.
Yeah.
And actually, I've seen I've been watching the TV also, so
Mm.
the mainstream media in Israel, and actually
Mm.
I've been very I'd say impressed in a way
Mm.
because they actually seem to be very balanced. Like there
Mm.
was a story that I started watching there, and they were having they were talking to a woman who was one of the captured
Mm.
hostages,
Wow.
and she managed to actually briefly befriend one of the
Mm.
leader,
Hmm.
the Hamas leader, and he
Wow.
well initially he wanted to uh well first he wanted her to, I think she's because she spoke Arabic and
Mm.
they wanted her to either call people or like
Mm.
to let people know like I didn't exactly get the
Mm.
understanding like what was going on, like because obviously that was that's still people are still shaken up. Anyway, the woman said that she uh, managed to somehow see compassionate side of a person,
Mm.
like from what I just saw, and uh, obviously, like well, thanks to her, they captured the terrorists, but she
Mm.
wanted to tell him to somehow maybe spare him, but
Mm.
obviously that didn't quite work out. She said that like today she heard that his parents, his family, well, yeah, most of them are young people. Most of them
Mhm.
actually, from what I understood, they had work permits.
Mm.
That's actually how a lot of them got in.
Mm.
They
Mhm.
had work permits. Some of the people recognized them.
Mhm.
Uh, that one guy, like apparently he had regrets for what he did,
Mm.
but it, yeah, and it's actually having that side of the story being
Hmm.
shown in like Israeli mainstream media was like a very impressed me. Like
Wow. Yeah.
they showed the side that's somewhat more compassionate for the
Mhm.
Palestinians.
Wow. So this was a
And
woman who had been captured and then
yeah,
rescued. She wasn't part of a prisoner
yeah,
exchange. She was rescued.
she was at first a prisoner, then she was rescued.
Mm-hmm. And this was she rescued in like was she brought back to Gaza and rescued? She was rescued like on they were taking her back to Gaza or how exactly?
No, I think it was in one of the cities by not cities like towns in kibbutzim.
Mm.
I don't know what you call it.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Those are the places they got into.
They had invaded.
And
They had captured her, and they were still
yeah,
there. And then the IDF came.
yeah,
Mm-hmm. Wow.
and yeah, I was like really impressed that they would show that side of the story,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to what's going on with well, Al Jazeera Arabic. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually following a couple of people who I don't really speak Arabic, or I can read. I taught myself to read
Mm-hmm.
it, uh, and I can sort of recognize a word there and a word there, but like
Mm-hmm.
there's people who actually talk about it on well, I mean in some groups in the like there's Palestinian groups in Telegram,
Mm.
which actually during the massacres I was not getting in. Like I prefer not to be in there because they were
Mm.
posting pictures of dead people.
Yeah. Mm.
And now they just turned around and now they're just complaining that they're getting bombed, like which
Mm.
is uh, yeah, like it's I don't know what to say there.
Mm.
The, the most horrible thing is it was the people were basically celebrating
Mm.
deaths
Yeah.
of Israelis. And I don't see anybody celebrating here is celebrating the deaths of Palestinians. Maybe
Mm.
there's like a couple of nutcases of
Mm.
like one of my roommates actually was screaming at the
Mm.
television. But that guy like he I don't even
Mm. What was
count
he?
his opinion.
What was he screaming?
They should die and
Mm.
whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. I can imagine
Uh,
it's a tough. It's probably a very tough moment for most people um, to feel empathy and to feel compassion.
yeah, it's very difficult. And obviously, I think the problem with the Middle Eastern culture is that they're very well. I guess that applies to Israel as well. People are very tribal
Mm.
and are not always able to think holistically in a
Mm.
more compassionate way.
Mm-hmm.
So, although obviously there's people in Israel, but well, with Palestinians, to be honest, I do know a couple of people on Twitter they're mostly anonymous because they
Mm.
don't want anybody to know who they are.
Sure. Yeah. I can imagine
Uh,
it's probably pretty tough to to be in Gaza, especially, and probably to say publicly something like Hamas shouldn't have done that, or
yeah,
something like that. I imagine it's very dangerous to say that.
yeah, and I'm thinking of one person. calls himself on Twitter Arab against anti-Semitism,
Mm,
and basically he lives in like a village with Palestinians around, and he
mm,
said that he like on the day of the attack he woke up to sounds of fireworks and people cheering outside.
mm. Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, I've actually never seen like yeah, I haven't really seen any of the Arabic side speaking favorably of the Jewish, like, except for Twitter.
Mm,
Like on mainstream media, I haven't seen anything like that.
mm,
Unlike with the news, where they actually try to show that one of the victims had like a connection with one of the leaders who actually regretted what he did.
mm, mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of a difficult topic to talk about.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for people watching, this is more what these kind of conversations should look like. Um, it shouldn't it shouldn't be some kind of debate. It shouldn't be some kind of. I mean, there's certainly a place for discussing opposing ideas and viewpoints. There's certainly a lot of probably most of what people need to do is if you're interested in the situation that's arising, probably a lot of what you can do is just start to learn about history to understand, how we even got here. Because it's not a new situation that's arisen suddenly in the past 4 days or the past 10 years, or even the past 50 years. There's roots going back centuries and millennia, but
Hmm.
certainly the past 70 years now. Yeah. Um,
Hmm.
um,
Yeah, and also with 70 years, there's a lot of misinformation I keep seeing. Like
mm,
the conflict. Uh, like one person actually, there's a post from somebody I just looked up. Yeah, there's a give me a moment. I'll post in the Twitch chat. There's this
mm.
person who, and he
Oh, well.
it was him or
Mm.
if that's him. Was there another person? Yeah, I think that was him.
Mm. Yeah, like this. In the Arabic article, Nadim basically doubled down on the urgency for peace and its ability to transform the Middle East. He attacked Iran, maintained the Hamas actions were Iran instigated as part of Iran's major war effort to destroy the Gulf led regional project of regional transformation. This is the view I suspect of the Arab Gulf government, and I believe most intelligent people, including my moderately intelligent self, agree with. Nadim then says the best response is to insist on peace and let Iran derail the region back into chaos, instability, and misery. I'm not quite sure what he's saying at the end. But this is something where I've heard, so as a kind of like response from a lot of Americans that I've heard is like, okay, wow, now peace is gonna be out the window. Israel's just gonna level Gaza. Any hopes of peace are dashed. I mean, I'm sure there's some truth to that, but at the same time, as this writer says, the urgency for peace is now at a higher time
Yeah,
than ever.
I don't think it'll happen like in recent time. Like it
Mm,
may obviously the recent attack delayed the whenever it could have happened,
Mm-hmm.
delayed to at least by 20 years.
Mm.
And hopefully things will get better, but who
Mm-hmm.
knows? One of the things he mentioned about the history is that the person is a scholar. He reads a
Mm.
lot. He mentions a lot about the books and the
Mm.
ideological background behind Hamas and ISIS and a lot of the radical movements.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, uh, there was like one radical who he said ideologically is the person who uh, caused the recent who is ideologic like his ideology is what a lot of the terrorist groups base
Mm.
their ideas. Said Qutb, I
Mm.
think it's give me a moment, I'll write this.
So Kuto. Yeah.
And he actually he has a lot of literature that's very
Mm-hmm. He's Egyptian.
yeah. But one interesting thing that he actually mentioned that which I agree is that originally uh, when Israel was like founded as a country, like before that there was no Arab identity or a Palestinian identity. It
Mm.
was all of that was after the Ottoman Empire. It was just a bunch of basically a lot of Muslim tribes that identify themselves as Muslims, and they're the Arab culture is such that there are lots of different clans. Sometimes they're at war with each other, which, by the way, like that still happens here in Israel. Like I remember there was a couple of years ago there was like two Bedouin clans that were clashed with each other, and then
Mm.
they got caught by the police. Basically, they've been killing each other for generations for because of something I don't know. Something happened like a family feud. Actually, it reminds me of the Huckleberry Finn story, but there was like
Mm.
I don't know if you ever read it.
No, I didn't.
There's a part in the story where Huck Finn and Jim they ran away. Huck ran away from his drunk father together
Mm.
with Jim, he was a slave, and they uh, they went on the boat, and then they managed to get to an area where there was were two warring families,
Mm.
and they got caught between that. There was this couple from these two families that fell in love with each other, and but obviously couldn't be kind of like Romeo and Juliet in a
Mm-hmm.
way. And but the that part is a little sad because they end up all killing each other.
Mm.
Only the couple survived and they ran away.
Mm.
Anyway, that kind of an aside. But that's more or less what happened in the culture. And actually, I have a friend who, uh, well, she's Arabic, and she said that like that's exactly what happens there,
Mm.
unfortunately. And yeah, she personally doesn't associate with that side of the culture.
Mm.
Although actually, I find like the Arabic language and history very
Mm.
interesting. Although that's
Yeah.
like I tend to take an interest in multiple cultures. Like I told you in the chat,
Mm.
like I'm thinking of studying Hindi, maybe kind of unrelated, but
No, that's great.
yeah,
Yeah. Um, yeah. There's.
uh,
I mean, back to your general point. There's
yeah,
a lot of misinformation. A
yeah,
lot of it, I'm sure,
and
spread by probably well-meaning people who are trying to feel like they ought
yeah,
to contribute something, and what they have is
some
maybe
are
something they saw somewhere, and it's like, okay, this is footage from 2015. This is some, this is some unrelated video that's just going going around.
Mhm.
I've
And
seen
it's
reports about that. Yeah.
some of it is like some of the people are well-meaning, some of them are not so well-meaning.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. There's some
Mm-hmm.
very bad actors out there too.
Mm-hmm.
And like with the history, like the a lot of the Muslim tribes, if we're gonna go back to that, like they were like from what I understood initially, the the European Union carved up the place
Mm.
because the British were occupying the place, and there actually were some Jewish as well as Arab ideologues who had their own agendas. Like there was
Mm.
I've read about Izzuddin al-Qassam. What was his? That was his name. He was basically a pan-Arabist. He was
Mm.
like an Arab nationalist, and he came over from Syria, and he basically started recruiting people into his own, like sort of a terrorist group. I don't know if that was back then, if that would be considered that, but basically was recruiting people and encouraging them to attack both the British and the Jewish people who lived there. By the way, like the uh, Hussein himself said that like for hundreds of years there were always mixed populations here in Israel, but like both what you could call Arabs today, some Africans, Jews
Mm.
as well, obviously. The
Christians.
only the only thing that the Zionist movement, like the old Zionist movement, not what people call that now, because
Mm.
that seems to be like a weird euphemism for Jew,
Mm.
from what I noticed.
Mm.
Back then, all it did was just increase the population a bit,
Mm.
and obviously as the tensions started to increase, there were like massacres of Jews. There was
Mm.
like the Hebron massacre, from what I've read.
Mm.
In what year was that in? Hebron. Uh,
1929.
yeah,
Is that the?
1929.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically, lots of people were killed there,
Mm.
and basically these types of things, like they were very small scale, obviously, because
Mm.
it's not like entire nations; it's groups of people.
Yeah. And that was during the British Mandate, right? Is
Yeah,
that?
that was during
Yeah.
the British Mandate,
Mm-hmm.
and there were lots of these little conflicts, and I think at some point it grew, and then obviously when the British just abandoned the place, just told everybody, "You guys figure it out,"
Mm.
and then the War of Independence for Israel started. Then that's when like, and people said that the Palestinians were misplaced, and look, there's a lot of mixed information. From what I
Mm.
understood, there were people who stayed and became Israelis. There were people who uh, well, there were people who were told by the surrounding governments to go away, and there were people who were thrown out by local Jews,
Mm.
because you can't really pretend that these types of things didn't happen. But
Mm.
like it was a whole bunch of things together. It's not like
Yeah.
it's not black and white. And yeah, and actually, what I don't understand now is how there could be so many refugees, even though there were less than 1 million people and it was like a population exchange. The
Mm.
Arabic population which was in Israel, a portion of them were like were lost, and then the most of the Jewish population from the surrounding countries came in.
Mm. Yeah,
Uh,
I have like a vague recollection from reading a book that talked about this. It was like a critique of another book written in America that was like a complete fraud. That was just like pulling random numbers from random places. But yeah, that question of like different numbers of different populations and the way they moved, which is like is difficult to document because
yeah,
there was no kind of like unified either like Arab or Jewish or kind of government keeping track of everybody at that
Yeah,
point in the region.
and there
Um,
were like today we have biometric IDs. Back
mm,
then, like nobody had that. Like there was just pieces
yeah.
of paper, and paper could be lost easily.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, yeah. I
So
mean,
yeah,
I know the kind of like question of what happened during the founding of Israel is something that comes up a lot, and I think there's some relevance, but I think it's not
yeah,
necessary 100% to go quite that far back to you know
yeah. It's
and as who was I
like
talking to about this?
at this point, Israel's existence is not relevant. Like it
Mm-hmm.
exists. Like you can't really somebody said you can't unring the bell. Like you
Mm-hmm.
can't just take it all back.
Yeah, I think I was talking to maybe a friend of mine, and we were saying like, you know, the question of unraveling, you know, rights and wrongs or who did what to who. I think that's not something that can be resolved at this point. Maybe at some point in the future, after some stable system is established, and you know, decades or centuries of peace, maybe some kind of reconciliation can happen. But for now,
Yeah,
it's a question of you know what situation can we create for Israelis and Palestinians where everybody's necessary needs are met. That's the question. It's not even really about like fair. It's about like how can we set something up so that that there's stability and
yeah,
peace and you know some degree of justice and you know Israelis have safety and Palestinians have safety and autonomy and you know access to basic necessities. That's the kind of like level
mhm,
of conversation going to
yeah,
you know rights and wrongs and there's so much suffering on both sides.
yeah.
That's never going
Like
to be never going to be unwound.
yeah.
Um,
Actually, funny thing, I just looked up the. Well, I didn't. I looked into the book, the page of the Hebron massacre.
mm,
Just scrolled through the motive for why it happened.
mm,
There were false rumors that Jews were slaughtering Muslims in Jerusalem and were planning to
mm,
attack Al Aqsa, which is like like it's a story that keeps repeating itself. Like
mm,
nobody's slaughtering people in Jerusalem and
mm,
Al Aqsa. It's still around. Nobody wants anything to do with it,
mm,
and
mm,
there's always like the first Intifada was started because of that very rumor.
mm,
And the whole thing actually goes back to before Israel even existed.
yeah. Yeah, it's yeah. I was talking to my friend a couple nights ago until very early in the morning. He was very scared about anti-Semitism. He's like married into an Arab family, and so they're like you know cousins-in-laws who are posting things and are seeing this
Hmm.
um, and I was telling him you know it's not that I'm you know have no fear about anti-Semitism. You know that of course that's something I worry about and that's something I'm concerned about. But I wouldn't assume, and I was talking to Wick that I wouldn't assume that everybody who's having some kind of um, some kind of stupid reaction to these news stories or what somebody says, you know, that's necessarily anti-Semitism. I think it's more of like a kind of polarized or dogmatic thinking. Um,
Well, actually, give me a moment. I'll take some water.
mm-hmm,
The the same person who posted the article I linked in
mm,
Twitter. He actually mentioned also uh, a recent event like a couple of days ago, but it was more of a comment on Arabic culture. He's
mm,
said recently, what was her name? The He called her the first Arabic porn star.
mm,
Uh, the
Mia Khalifa?
what
Is
was her?
that?
Yeah, yeah, and he said that she basically she's like a progressive feminist
Mm-hmm.
who supposedly is like a modern person, and yet she basically defended spoke in favor of terrorists who are killing Jews,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like for him it was like a he said that it's a very deeply embedded cultural thing in some circles apparently,
Mm-hmm.
and some people get out of it. Some people apparently, even when they become more progressive, they still can't shake it off.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel that same thing with my family who are American Jews who are fourth generation from Ukrainian Jews. Um, like my grandparents were very progressive and ultimately like became atheists, but really staunch supporters of Israel. My uncle converted to Judaism to match my aunt, and I always argue with him about
Mhm,
Israel. And
mhm.
um, yeah, I feel like there really is like the consequences of centuries and millennia of some um, kind of antagonism of peoples who have lived together in the Middle East um,
Yeah, and
for thousands of years and have this kind of like we'll always jump to defensive. In this case, literally tribe. It kind of bugs me when people say tribal to mean, but in this case,
yeah,
it's like literally tribal. The tribes of Israel, tribes of other.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing is, we like the majority of Israelis are Middle Eastern, and obviously
Mm-hmm.
Palestinians are Middle Eastern, and
Mm-hmm.
we're not that different actually.
Yeah.
Like
I
you look at
mean.
the people, what they look like, the
Mm-hmm.
culture overall, they're not very different,
Yeah.
but still there's a division.
Yeah. And it's so.
Actually, one thing I
Yeah.
wanted to ask:
Please. Yep.
why do the like obviously social media isn't
Mm.
entirely representative of reality, but why do so many people on social media obsess over Ashkenazi Jews? Like what?
Oh.
Like Ashkenazi Jews are a relative minority in Israel, and most of them live in Europe and the States. So what do they have to do with it?
um. I'm I'm not sure. I haven't seen that. What do people say about Ashkenazi
And
Jews specifically?
uh,
Like
basically, they're saying that it's white people colonizing the Middle East.
uh, that's weird. I don't know. Um, I was just looking at like a Wikipedia article. Yeah, Ashkenazim are like 3%. Um, I don't know.
It's not.
I don't know where people. I honestly can't remember Ashkenazi versus Sephardim like at the time. I feel like as a Jew, I don't like think about that very often. But that's a
I know,
big
like
thing people are talking about and like on social media.
yeah, that's apparently a thing. Like obviously, that's not only is that not relevant here in Israel. Like most people, there's a lot of intermarriages. There's a lot of mixed people. There, like you,
Mm-hmm.
like nobody cares about that stuff. Maybe, like I remember reading about how in the '60s, a lot of the Jewish people from Arab countries came in, and there were cultural clashes
Mm-hmm.
between the Ashkenazis who were more socialist and they were more like
Mm-hmm.
more Western. Like there
Yeah.
was cultural differences,
It's more
and
more Eastern European.
yeah, and there actually were. I remember reading there were fights breaking out in the streets, but today like nobody cares. People like people marry each other. There's no
Mm.
like even looks wise people
Mm.
like I remember talking to this one guy. He was like he has green eyes and like very like a very brown complexion.
Mm-hmm.
I asked him where his family was from. He said Ukraine, which and like you're not gonna be able to tell the difference here.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe in with people who have never been to Israel, like who have been for generations in England, maybe
Mm-hmm.
you can clearly see that they don't look Israeli.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's sad that even when you take away any visual identifier of difference, people are still able to have such deep animosity across, if it's not going to be across racial lines, then it's going to be across religious lines. If it's not going to be religious
Yeah.
lines, it's going to be um, across some border lines.
Mhm. It's always people always find an excuse to kill each other, whether it's a
Mm-hmm.
patch of dirt
Yeah.
or are they wearing different funny hats
Uh
or
huh.
whatever.
Yeah. How wide are your hats? That's the
Or maybe
that's
they
the
speak
deciding
different
factor.
languages, even though they're not.
Not
Like,
so different.
yeah, actually, I remember reading about the what was it, the Bosnian War, like
Mm.
the was it Czechoslovakia, how it's the
Herzegovia.
like how like half of them were Catholic and the other
Mm.
half were like Orthodox
Mm.
Christian, and
Mm-hmm.
that was the only difference.
Yeah.
They all spoke the same language, and they uh,
Yeah.
anyway there's like it's the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's I don't know if like human nature is like a very maybe a vague thing to
Mm.
talk about, but it seems to like consistently part of humanity where people always find the reasons to start conflicts with each other, even if they're very similar.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, there were actually some conflicts before this war. Like I remember there was some news on between the more religious Jews and the more secular Jews, and how like the more religious ones that were trying to basically trying to make the country more religious and
Mm.
more similar to our neighbors.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
And
yeah.
then there was the opposing people. Like obviously with the I don't know if you can call it a good thing with what happened in Saturday. Like basically people stopped the infighting and
Mm.
were more what's the word, joined.
Mm.
Uh,
Yeah.
stopped fighting basically.
Yeah. I mean, I think I remember hearing or reading that the kind of religious groups, like the kind of ultra religious, ultra conservative groups, are something like 6 to 8
Yeah.
percent in the Knesset, and maybe within the population. Is that the right
Uh,
ballpark?
yeah, I think so. That's like the Mea Shearim, the ones.
Mm.
There's a street in Jerusalem,
Hmm.
and it's called Mea Shearim, which is 100 gates,
Mm.
translated roughly, and it's like a very ultra orthodox area. Like people are like there's actually been reports of like more secular Israelis trying to
Mm.
come in, and they were dressed a
Mm.
bit less traditionally, and then they had like people chase them out.
Wow. Yeah.
And so yeah, there's like a bit of a divide there. But
Mm-hmm.
personally, I actually find that interesting. I'm not a woman. Maybe they would
Mm.
let me in because I know that women actually get more crap from there.
Wow. You'd be interested to go there and see if they would try to, you know.
Well, just to talk to the
Oh
people,
yeah.
to get to know them and
Mm.
see what makes them tick. Also, there's like there's book sales there, and I really like collecting religious books.
Mm. Yeah, I'm sure they would have great volumes.
Yeah,
Um, Yeah, it's so interesting. I was talking to this Orthodox kid on stream about I can't remember what topic we were talking about. But I was like, oh, you would probably say that I'm not even Jewish, period, right? And he was like, yeah. Uh, um, but it's those ultra religious, ultra conservative Israelis
Mhm.
who are generally the ones building settlements. Is that accurate?
No,
More
actually,
so than the more secular.
specifically, they actually the ones building the settlements are not as religious as the
Mm,
Me'asharim people, because those are actually I have one book from like a, what do you call it, a dynasty, a religious, like,
mm,
obviously they had their own dynasties. There's Chabad. There's
mm-hmm.
if you, maybe you know about them.
Yeah.
There's Breslov, and then there's these ones. What are they called again? Uh, I'll Google them for a moment.
Mm,
Their founder is Rabbi Yoel Teitelboim, who
mm,
was from uh, he was from Hungary, and
mm,
was what were they called? Yeah, he's yeah, the Satmar.
mm,
And they live in Johannesburg and New York, and they're like very anti-Israel,
mm. Interesting.
and they basically, from one end, like, some of them live here in Israel as well, but generally speaking, they're against the existence of a like a secular Jewish state, because
Oh, yeah. Okay.
uh, uh, yeah, they said that according to them, like, you're supposed to wait for the Mashiach, the Messiah.
You're not supposed to make a state. The state's supposed to yeah, to be
Like,
brought on. Yeah.
it's supposed to materialize out of thin air
Yeah.
with the Messiah. Obviously, I don't agree with that. And with recent events, it's been proven that there's a need for the state. Otherwise, who knows what could happen to people.
So, yeah, that's a question that's always um, that I'm always interested in is just that tension between different, more secular or more religious or more kind of expansionist elements
Yeah,
within Israel, and just how much, because it's also, I don't know if it's the same groups that are pushing for more settlements, but it's the more orthodox, more religious groups that are able to get exemptions from the
yeah,
army, and it's the
yeah.
army who has to go defend the settlements.
Yeah, they are religious, but they're not ultra religious. Like, they're not
Mm,
ultra orthodox. Obviously,
mm-hmm,
they're kind of a sort of a mix between the two. Obviously,
mm,
Israel originally was a secular idea,
yeah.
which is part of why Satmar are against that, and other
Mm,
Hasidic
mm-hmm,
groups. Actually, I remember talking to a guy from Chabad, which usually they're not against it, but he apparently and his family are kind of
mm,
are not, although they live here.
yeah. So they're not so against it, not enough to
Yeah, yeah, they kind of they're, on the one hand they're against it, but
opportunists.
the other hand, yeah, people. Actually, I think it's similar to how some people think there's some people could be could have anti-Semitic views, but they still talk to Jewish people, and uh,
Or there's here in the United States we have a very very anti-Semitic right wing that's highly supportive of Israel.
yeah,
Um, it's kind of an interesting um, interesting group.
that's that's
They hate Jews, but they love Israel.
yeah. Although, yeah, I've been reading a bit about Christianity, and from what I understand, they're very on the one hand they're very divided between each other because there's a lot of different types of Christians. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's just with Protestants, from whatever there's Methodists, Pentecostals, there's Baptists, and etc.
Mm.
And it's just that's just the Americans.
Yeah.
I know there's Lutherans also. Anyway, and then there's like the Catholics and the Orthodox,
Mm-hmm.
like Orthodox, and from what I understand, they don't always consider each other Christian,
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
and
Yeah.
they have to like if you want to become Orthodox, like go from one, you have to be converted from one to another,
Mm-hmm.
like go through the whole process of conversion.
Yeah. Like in the United States, um, was it JFK? I think it was kind of controversial that he was like, a Catholic running for president. It was considered like not like a Christian, like some different
Mhm.
thing. Um, Maybe more controversial than Bernie Sanders as a Jew. I think was like JFK running as a Catholic.
Interesting.
I think attitudes have changed overall, and America's a lot more secular now than it was back then. But
Hmm.
yeah, those differences between sects are really big.
Yeah, it's the same thing, obviously, with some Jewish people. I know that I remember reading about the divide between the Hasidics and the Mitnagdim, which were they were more the Hasidics were uh, more like they want to bring more
Mm,
mystical traditions back into Judaism, which came
mm-hmm.
from the Kabbalistic stuff, and
Yeah.
the Mitnagdim, which it literally means the the people who are going against what do you call them? Um,
Mm.
give me a second. I'll check the dictionary. Uh, okay, wait.
Yeah, there's a
Yeah, the opposers or
the
something like
opposes.
that.
Uh-huh. Huh.
And basically, they had like their theology was that the mystical stuff like it's still like they still believed it, but the common people are not allowed to have anything to do with it, and
Mm.
they're only supposed to practice like the halakha, the Jewish law, and obviously the also the differences kind of blend into each like the more you deeper you look into it, there's a lot of overlap.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember reading. Actually, I should finish reading it. A biography of the Alter Rebbe, who was the rabbi who founded Chabad.
Mm.
He wanted to meet up with the Vilna Gaon. Uh, he was like a Latvian rabbi who was one of the Mitnagdim,
Mm.
and that rabbi, the the Vilna Gaon just refused to see him. He
Mm.
didn't want to have anything to do with him, and there was a lot of attempts to like sabotage one another. I remember there were like the Alter Rebbe was writing pamphlets of Hasidic philosophy. There were people trying to forge their own versions of it and attributing it to him
Mm.
to to sabotage it to so that
Mm.
people will go against him.
The original deep fake.
Yeah. And yeah, there's like religious conflicts like exist everywhere. Also, obviously, with I know less about Islam, but I do know there's obviously a divide between the Sunnis and the
Mm-hmm.
Shiites,
Yeah.
and there was some they were killing each other basically. I, I don't know about now. Just I remember reading about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's like a conflict seems like like it's constantly happening with people, but regardless whether it's within a tribe or outside of it, like between tribes or countries or whatever. Seems to be part of humanity, like part of our
Mm-hmm.
nature. You could
Yeah.
say.
And the antidote to that, as I was talking to my friend about, so he was, um, well, I can talk about what he was saying, but I was saying the only antidote to that is to extend trust, to extend empathy, um, because if if everybody um, is unable to um,
Mm.
talk about the wrong things that whoever they're most focused on, caring about, right? Everybody has um, some kind of side that they feel pulled to, at least emotionally. I mean, for me, having grown up, having been, not only Jewish, but felt like I was kind of fed a lot of kind of dogmatically pro-Israeli propaganda as a kid, and with Israel and with Netanyahu saying, if you criticize Israel, you're anti-Semitic by definition. I've always
That's
felt like,
nonsense.
yeah, I think that's nonsense,
If
and
you
yeah. Go ahead,
if
please.
you criticize Israel, then you're basically Israeli.
That's beautiful. I'm gonna quote you on that.
Because like there's people here criticizing Israel all the time, and I don't think I don't think I don't know any people personally who like Bibi
Yeah.
Netanyahu.
Yeah, I mean,
Like,
not to derail, but yeah, I'm just so curious about. So I felt like the last time I was hearing about him, he had like it seemed like he was kind of not getting that much support, and then on top of that, there were all these like corruption charges,
yeah,
and then
that
and then the
came
next
out of
time I looked, he's like back in charge.
yeah, that was like a very frustrating thing that happened. There's actually I'm just looking right now. There's a video on Twitter between like a politician who well, there's people arguing it basically. A woman who supposedly is part of the reason why Bibi Netanyahu like he got into back into office,
Hmm.
and she was okay. I didn't really know the details, but people are blaming her for that.
Mm. What was her role? Like she's a politician or
uh, Give me a second. She was. Sh I want to take a look. She's a minister, and there's like a video of people shouting at her in Hebrew,
mm.
and like I'm like if I turn on the audio now, it's gonna clash with the
Yeah.
stream. So there's
Yeah.
people writing that well they're shouting at her that she ruined the country and whatever,
Mm.
and
Hmm.
she's part of the reason why he is still in office.
Interesting. Yeah. Um, but yeah,
So it's
you would say that he's wildly unpopular in terms of
well,
most
there are
Israelis,
some
or
people
surely
who
there's yeah.
there's some people who are still like him, but yeah, I don't think many people like him that much. Like
Mm.
my parents, for example, they're very right wing, but they don't want to have anything to do with it. They
Mm.
actually completely avoided voting in the last
Mm.
cycle,
Mm-hmm.
and that was mostly like out of protest. They don't want to
Mm.
have anything to do with it. Like they know he's going to get voted in, and they know there's corruption, and they don't want to take part in it.
Yeah, kind of the Trump of Israel. That there's maybe some people who support him very strongly, but so many people, even from the right wing, are you just
I don't know.
don't
Like
even agree with it.
I get the impression that Trump is not as competent as Bibi. He at
That's
least has
true.
like
Yeah.
he has a very long political career. He's been
Mm-hmm.
around for
Yeah.
how long? Since the 80s and the 90s? I don't even know.
Mm-hmm.
So he at least he actually is like it's his profession is being a politician. He's actually competent in what he does. Trump, he's like I don't know. He's a businessman and he
Mm-hmm.
likes to run his mouth.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say that's his best quality is that he's very incompetent. That's his one kind of saving grace is that he's terrible at his job. Um,
Well, as a politician, maybe I don't know about his business career. Obviously, he managed to remain rich for decades, so maybe he's good at that.
mm-hmm.
Actually, I before the whole thing started, I remember being just in general being curious about him because of the Apprentice, and I mem- I
Mm-hmm.
I managed to get his book. What was it called? He has a bunch of
The Art
books.
of the Deal.
Yes, that one.
He wrote his entire name on it.
And actually, I've heard somebody say that he actually had the ghostwriter
Oh yeah,
write that for him.
100% of it goes written. Yeah.
And I read through a little bit of it, but uh, like from what I understood, the part that I've read is actually not the like the major part. The beginning is basically him describing his day where he was. He leaves home. He's on the phone all day. Then he talks about he stops. He picks. I don't know, like like he was an interesting person, but as a politician, I don't see him like being able to do anything.
Yeah. And now lots of legal battles.
Mm. Yeah. I don't know.
Um,
Somebody said online said that he was actually much more like in this old videos. He was much more eloquent and was had more self control. And now he basically regressed.
yeah.
Like who knows what happened to him now?
Yeah. I don't know if it's old age, neurological decline. Even even for Trump, I'm sure he exerted himself a little bit trying to be president.
Hmm.
Um, I know Obama, like the before and after pics where he has like no white hair and then he has a lot of white hair.
Yeah,
um,
yeah. Although it was but like 8 years, so like you're gonna.
hmm yeah.
But yeah, obviously the pressure is also gonna be on top of that.
I started
To
getting
make
white
you
hairs
faster.
during my PhD. I started finding white hairs. I seem to have be not as common now that I'm finished. Um, but yeah, I mean, this is like this charge of anti-Semitism for critique of Israel is something that bothers me, and I feel personally like the way that the Israeli government and especially Netanyahu has made this conflation of criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism.
Actually, I've
That
never
yeah,
like locally. I've never heard anybody say that. Like maybe it's people who
I think
are
it would probably
pro-Israel
sound
or
ridiculous
in
inside of Israel, so that nobody would
yeah.
say it, but outside, more liberal or left wing people, it's they're not as informed, and so they can hear that and they think it makes sense.
I don't know, like
Um,
there's like left wing people here in Israel. Actually, there were. I remember seeing videos of people protesting the recent war. Like were people with signs and like there were a bunch of people who came from who saw the protester and they were just trying to trying to get to how do you say it? Like I was thinking suddenly I started thinking in Hebrew. Uh, Basically, they're against the protesters. Obviously, there are people died recently. Like how do you? That's actually an additional question. How do you respond to the massacres that happen? Like how else do you? From the one hand, like people are right. You can't just uh, collectively punish everybody
Mm,
on the one hand. On the other hand, like how do you like what do you do? Like you can't just let it go because there were ceasefires in the past. There were attempts
mm,
to make accommodations. Like none of that helped. None of that helped.
yeah. Yeah.
And
This is oh yeah, go ahead.
this is now it's just it's a very extreme situation, but like it was basically brought to now. Like I personally don't even see how things could have gone differently. Even
Mm,
though I'm like personally, I'm like I have nothing against Palestinian people like and with Arabic people in general. Like I find the culture interesting. I don't know. Like,
yeah.
actually, there's a while ago I remember taking interest in the topic, and I even went to Quora and wrote an
Mm,
article.
mm,
And I just
mm.
remembered. And give me a second, maybe I can find it. Maybe yes. Yeah, that was. I think that's it. No, that's not the number. Ugh. Hopefully, it doesn't like log you in as me. I think there's like a code
Okay.
there.
Let's see. Mm. Oh, this is great. This is yeah, this is fantastic. I'll take a look at this because yeah, this question of what is Zionism. I mean, in some ways, it's kind of um, it's something that can be left aside for a lot of discussion around Israel, around trying to create peace, and on the other
Mhm.
hand, there's it's something that comes up a lot in terms of how do people use the word Zionism today? How do different people use it? How
Mhm.
I heard Norman Finkelstein talking about it. How the
Who
kind
is
of
that?
he's an American historian and activist who has kind of spent his life devoted to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and he's written a lot of books. I've read some of his book, Image and Reality of the Palestinian Conflict, where
Mhm.
he's a really excellent academic. Yeah, I'd highly recommend him as a source for just giving really detailed, really accurate history of different time periods, and also with a very kind of activist perspective. He was like in a lot of like
Mhm.
lefty movements, and he was saying that his what he saw, the way people were using the term Zionism in terms of like what their kind of alignment was, changed over time,
Mhm.
about um, you know either um, creating a homeland for safety for Jews, creating a
Yeah.
more kind of expansionist state, something, or creating a state that inherently within it, okay, we want this to be a Jewish state. There are Palestinian people here. They need to not be here. So somehow we have to get rid of them. Or people talking about like a more lefty perspective, creating a secular kind of like pluralistic state. So a lot of different perspectives on what
Well,
Zionism
there's
would be.
from what Zionism was, like I wrote in the article itself, that
Mm,
the way I see it is that the what it was is basically the creation, the idea of the creation of a Jewish state, and
mm-hmm.
really that's it.
Yeah.
Like it's like now basically the the idea has been fulfilled,
Mm,
and the Zionism as it originally was is not relevant now.
mm-hmm.
Okay, basically it's a dead ideology.
Yep.
But now basically the term has been revived and people use it to mean something different.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess it's in political in a political sense it means something. today, but like, personally, I don't really come across it on a day-to-day basis with talking to people.
Yeah.
I don't know,
It
nobody thinks about it, and nobody really.
yeah. It's kind of it's like some people will use Zionist as like as like a slur for saying, "Oh,
Yeah,
you're kind of like, pro Israel and hateful toward, Palestinians or Arabs or something." And
I think that if you're pro-Israel, that doesn't mean you're against Arabs, or like there's
yeah,
Arabs
yeah,
living here, and
yeah.
I talk like I
I would
remember
agree.
hanging out with a bunch of guys. Like I was working at a supermarket, and there was these. We were having like a lunch break, or not a lunch break, like a break for,
Hmm.
and there was these guys having like sitting outside, and and they invited me over, so we just sat around and talked. I don't remember what we talked about, but like basically they were Bedouins. Like the
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Bedouins are the like Arabic people live in the desert,
Hmm. Yeah. When I went
and
on when I went on Birthright, we stayed with the Bedouins.
yeah,
Um, Tasty coffee.
uh, and yeah, like there was. I don't remember any hostility there.
Mm. Um,
Although maybe there was one guy I can remember. Although I don't know. Some people are just assholes. I don't know.
and then um, there's the way that I've heard, Zionism applied, where somebody, you know, somebody will say this is within an American context. I don't know if these kind of arguments would make any sense within an Israeli context, but within an American context, somebody might say, oh, if you're anti-Zionist, you're anti-Jewish or something like that. Um,
Um, well, what the first? Like, what does that mean to be anti-Zionist? Like,
yeah.
are you against the existence of a Jewish state? Because I think if in that case,
Hmm.
yes, because like where's anybody here gonna go?
Hmm. Yes. So I guess like the Zionism that I think it would be it could be you could have reasonable arguments to be against would be the idea that a Jewish state has to be in this particular historical borders rather than somewhere else, just a safe place for Jews. Um,
It's a little bit late for that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But just speaking in terms of historical context, and then a Zionist. So the argument that as Zionism, as the early Zionist thinkers were thinking about creating the state of Israel, they were noticing that non-Jews lived there, or too many non-Jews lived there, and that they would have to get them to leave or something. There's a
I,
population
I
problem, and that
actually
and that
I've
within
never
Zionism there's
actually I've
like
never
inherent.
read about that. Like I've never heard of that.
Mm, um, yeah, let
I
me.
know that the original, like I know that Golda Meir was a socialist, and
Yeah.
from what I understood, she was very pluralistic. She wouldn't have been
Hmm.
against people living
Yeah.
together.
Yeah, and so that's even so like so somebody who might say, I'm what I mean by Zionist would be a kind of pluralistic thing where, I want it to be a safe state for Jews, but I don't want people who are non-Jewish to be second-class citizens. I don't want,
Yeah,
people to be excluded. I don't want to kick people off their land, and that,
yeah,
therefore the prevailing kind of movements within the creation of Israel themselves would be anti-Zionist in that they weren't pluralistic, something like that. So even opposing those things, I don't know how much utility there is in fighting for one
well,
definition or another of Zionist.
there were
Um,
people who like maybe historical. There were people who had their own ideas of how a
mm,
Jewish state should have existed back
hmm.
then. Uh, I don't know. Like I probably would need to look more into that.
Hmm. Yeah. So um, image. Yeah. I was looking for like a PDF version. But this is what, just the Amazon link. But Image and Reality of the Israel-Palestine Conflict. Yeah, this is probably the revised edition. I think this is what I have. Oh, there's a coupon. This is this is the Norman Finkelstein book that I was reading. That
Oh,
he was
there's a
talking.
Kindle version.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Maybe I will buy it. Like I have a
Yeah.
whole bunch of Kindle books which
Yeah.
I download into my e-reader,
Mm-hmm.
but I need to finish the book I'm reading now, which I've been trying to finish it for like a couple of months.
Yeah, I have so many so many books that I'm just like not reading. But I feel so bad about it every day. Maybe today I'll
I can
read.
relate.
Maybe today.
Yeah, I need to read them too. And I also have a lot of physical books I didn't read. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, I've mostly physical books, which is good. I've ADHD, so it's like if I can't see something, I forget it exists. So if I walk by it and see it, then I'll remember it exists. Um, y-
Give, listen, I need to go to the bathroom for just a
mhm.
moment. So
Yeah,
I'll come back in just a couple of minutes.
yeah, sounds good.
Okay, okay, give me a
Um,
moment.
is it okay if I put what you wrote on Quora on
What?
stream? It has your full name.
Uh, actually, I'm a little bit. Hmm. I wish I
You could
did put it
say
in the
you could
chat.
say no. You could say no.
I want to
Uh,
say no, but now realize I put it in the chat, and even though there's barely any
um,
people here right now,
right
which
here,
is kind of already too bad.
I can time you out so it disappears.
Okay,
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
okay, okay. I'll be back.
Okay. Um, so I'll just read what he wrote. Before I answer, I want to preface. So the question is, what is Zionism? Before I answer, I want to preface: I'm an atheist. I live in Israel. I don't buy into either most pro-Israel narratives or pro-Palestinian narratives. Just so you know where I'm coming from. In my view, most answers here leave much to be desired. Some are outright propaganda, etymology, and history. The root Zionism comes from the Hebrew word Zion or Tzion. The earliest recorded use is in the Hebrew Bible. Usually it referred to Jerusalem, Solomon's temple, or the land of Israel as it's called there. You could look it up yourself if you have a copy of it on you. By the rivers of Babylon. The word Zionism was first coined in 1890 by Nathan Birnbaum, a writer and journalist born in Austria. So political Zionism and Theodor Herzl. The most notable figure in the history of Zionism is Theodor Herzl. Herzl was a fully assimilated Austrian citizen with little to no connection to the Jewish religion. In case the reader doesn't know, Jews didn't have equal rights in Austria until 1848. Herzl wrote a book called The Jewish State, Der Judenstaat, that was published in 1896. You could find a free audiobook recording of it in LibriVox. Oh, that's interesting. Much of what led to the development of Zionism as an ideology were various pogroms, massacres during the 1800s. That's what my family left Ukraine to escape. Jewish history is rife with an overwhelming number of mass murders. A lot of people today seem to be under the false impression that the Holocaust is the only ever major event where Jews died, but there were quite a few before and even some after. The breaking point was the 1894 Dreyfus Affair. The Jewish French military officer Alfred Dreyfus was convicted of leaking sensitive government information to Germany, France, and Germany used to be enemies throughout history. When evidence that Dreyfus was innocent surfaced, the French military suppressed it quickly, and it took years until he was allowed another trial, and finally he was acquitted in 1906. The only thing preventing a fair trial during this whole time was how Jews were stereotypically seen as nefarious. Initially, Herzl wanted Jews to move to Palestine. The roots of the name are, according to Wikipedia, the name was used by ancient Greek writers, later applied to the Roman province of Judea, which was renamed Syria Palestina. The plan was to legally buy land there and found a government. After the 1903 Kishinev massacre, Herzl suggested making a temporary Jewish homeland in Uganda, but it was rejected and he passed away beforehand. I remember also reading that South America was considered a potential land for Jewish country, but that obviously never happened. Religious opposition to Zionism. Spoken to many ultra-Orthodox Jews and have noticed that historically they were against the idea of establishing a Jewish government, less so a secular Jewish government. Like so many influential Zionists, such as Herzl suggested, it was a secular movement after all. Some of the early Zionists were also socialists, and religious Jews resisted that even more. While some notable exceptions exist, such as the Rabbi Abraham Isaac Kook, who is one of the founders of religious Zionism, by the whole, the most conservative Jews were against the establishment of a Jewish government, and that sentiment is shared by devout religious groups living in Israel today. There are even some fringe Jewish extremist groups, like Natureya Karta, that cooperate with terrorist groups in order to eliminate the modern government of Israel. I've spoken to an ultra-Orthodox rabbi who said that even though they don't agree with the idea of Zionism, we can't kill a child once it's been born. So this idea that, they weren't happy about how how Israel was founded, but they're not gonna say no to living there. On nationalism, Pan-Arabism, and Zionism, the early 1900s were an era of a kind of nationalist awakening for many countries. The worst examples of it are the countries that took it in the direction of ethno-nationalism. I'm not going to mention what happened in Europe, as we all know. The Arab world experienced a version of ethno-nationalist awakening, particularly in the form of Pan-Arabism. The flags of Arab Muslim countries today use the colors black, white, green, and red. The colors are meaningful for Arab nationalism. According to Wikipedia, black represents the black standard, used by Rashidun and Abbasid caliphates. White was the dynastic color of the Umayyad and Fatimid caliphates. Green is the color associated with the primary Arab religion of Islam, and therefore also a color representative of Rashidun caliphates. And red was the Hashemite dynastic color. It was a very interesting history to look into. Palestinians are obviously part of that. Their flag indicates these same colors. The Arab ethno-nationalists of Palestine from before Israel's founding even held meeting with European nationalists. Here's a photo of Haj Amin al-Husayni, the Palestinian Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, an Arab nationalist. He's being here with prominent German politician from 1941. Zionism was obviously a nationalist movement as well, but its main goal has always been Jewish self-determination, founding a Jewish government. Personally, I see it as a dead ideology. Israel exists, and there's no need for any more Jewish governments. As far as I'm aware, a portion of Zionists from back then were socialists, as well as Israel being a socialist government initially after being created. Socialists often put an emphasis on pluralism and not ethnicity. I'm not particularly informed on socialism, but to be honest, my view of socialism is quite unfavorable with what I do know. And then, are you back? I don't know if I heard you.
No,
Feel free to
I'm
to
back.
interrupt. I was just
Oh,
reading for stream.
okay.
I think it's a very useful resource. Um,
But yeah. And the, you can keep reading if you want, but
no, that's fine. Now we've got the live live Oleg. um, so um,
Mhm.
yeah, I guess I mean a big part of the stream is just to inform people of what's going on. I feel like the rush to any kind of conclusions are somewhat misguided. Really, I feel like most people should be, most people in the United States who are certainly people who are just now kind of hearing about this or just now coming into their consciousness because they're seeing news stories or seeing rallies or um, should just be to try to gain more information and try um, to separate factual information from from opinion or propaganda.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, are there kind of propaganda or misinformation that you've seen that you would like to correct? Either I guess either from more kind of like American social media side or from um, you know Israeli or from Palestinian side?
Well, from the Palestinian side, I know there's like on the I'm on their Telegram groups on
Mm-hmm.
two of them, and well, there were news recently of 40 children. I think I mentioned
Mm,
already. 40 children found who were beheaded.
mm-hmm.
Uh, like not all of them, but anyway, that's just
Yeah.
nitpicking the details. Basically,
Mm,
the in one of the groups they denied that that happened,
mm,
and obviously, like there's been it's validated that it did
mm,
happen.
mm-hmm.
It's basically lying,
Yeah.
and that's after they've been posting pictures of dead people on their
Mm-hmm.
groups.
Yeah. So at first there's some kind of surge of confidence. Hey, we're more powerful than we thought, maybe. But then
Mhm.
immediately after, trying to marginalize the atrocities that were committed.
Yeah,
Um,
it's give me a second. I want to look into another one. There's I kind of wish I could read Arabic.
mm,
There it is. The recent post said that one of the hostages has been released.
mm.
They
Yeah.
they're calling
Interesting.
the hostage an Israeli settler,
Hmm.
which is kind of funny because they were captured in around Gaza within
Mm,
the 1948 borders,
mm, mm-hmm.
which they're not, it's just, there's no settlers.
Yeah. Um, yeah, so I know that, or I've heard anyway, at least that one plan with the Hamas captures was to do prisoner exchanges.
Yeah,
Um,
there were, but now there's no prison. There's not going to be a prisoner exchange. They're
mm,
just well, obviously it's at a point where there's not going to be any negotiations with
mm,
Hamas. I mean, there the people on the social media have rightfully been saying that they're the equivalent of ISIS
mm,
because I mean they've been beheading people, and ISIS have like a very well-known video of beheading the reporter there.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
What do
but yeah,
you
like
what do
mm,
you make of the so this is something I read that so there's one thing I wanted to look into when it came to kind of the founding of Hamas, but in terms of more like the last, I guess, like 10 years or so, 15 years or so with Hamas, that um, the Israeli government and Netanyahu has decided to make Hamas the Palestinian party with which they'll like speak to Egypt through in order to sideline the Palestinian Authority, and that's given more legitimacy to Hamas. Um,
I actually have no idea about that. Like I've never heard
okay,
of that.
okay, that was. I wonder if I could find those news stories just to show you. Um, um,
They're actually an interesting thing. Uh, they're calling October 7th the Friday of the Al Aqsa flood.
mm,
Basically, the massacre is also justified with Al Aqsa, just like in the 1929 massacre.
mm, mm-hmm.
It's like it's a broken
Interesting.
record, basically.
Yeah. So this is like an op-ed piece, obviously, but I've seen this kind of sentiment. Um, oh, interesting. Yeah, I mean, what's your thoughts on, what this means for Netanyahu as a leader? Does this support him because he's been very hawkish, and therefore, people will see him as the right person for whatever job has to be done right now, or does this undermine his kind of
I think
competence?
I think at this point, and I've seen multiple people say it, that he's basically at the end of his career.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I saw something like that published a day ago, but I didn't know if that's um, it's hard to know when I read something in an American publication whether it's just kind of armchair
Yeah,
armchair speculation, or whether it's meaningful.
yeah. I remember coming across like an Israeli website, like in Hebrew, they were talking about in one of the Southern American countries. Apparently, there was a program for Palestinians,
Hmm.
and from what I understood, kind of failed. They wanted to give an education to people, but the uh, the Hebrew website, which it was like an independent website that I don't think I've even heard of it. Like it's not like one
Hmm.
of the few really well known ones. There's a couple of them. It's kind of obscure. Basically, they said that the program didn't work out because they were disturbing female students in the
Hmm.
university,
Hmm.
which maybe that happened. I don't know, but I've read another place where it was because the education program it was Venezuela. I just remember uh, the education program just wasn't very good. They
Hmm.
weren't really so like I have no idea which source to trust, but was like a very interesting thing. Also, the ability to read in a couple of languages really actually helps.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it's part of the reason why I want to learn Indic and languages in Arabic.
Yeah.
I've been like there's a Punjabi BBC,
Hmm. Interesting.
and they basically report on what happens in England. There's actually a significant Punjabi
Hmm.
uh, population in both England and in Canada,
Yeah.
and so they have like news in their languages.
Hmm.
Language, it's one language,
Yeah.
and it's interesting in the sense like I can use it as like a source for learning the language, although it is kind of advanced
Hmm.
compared to the level I'm at. But it's still interesting. Like you get to know how these people think, what their culture is, what the political issues which they think about are. So it's interesting in that sense.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, to be able to look at primary sources in their original language can
Yeah,
be a huge asset for understanding what's happening. Um, yeah, yeah, that's so impressive that you're just learning Hindi so you can understand more.
yeah. I like the culture. Mostly the main reason actually like is because I want to learn more about their religions. Like
Mm.
they have many religions there in India,
Mm-hmm.
and Punjabi actually is what the Sikh religion is like. Their
Mm.
scriptures are written in, and
Yeah.
that actually made me curious.
Mm-hmm.
And also Buddhism really interests me.
Mm.
What's interesting actually, there's a lot of like even in the states, there's a lot of like Jewish interest in Buddhism. There's even like There's even I've seen on Wikipedia that somebody released a book which is called "The Jews of the Lotus." Which is,
Yeah, there's definitely some overlap there.
yeah.
Um, all right, I'm starting to fade. I think
Uh,
my energy levels are going down.
uh,
Um, yeah, do you have any final thoughts for now? We can. I'm happy to talk more. Maybe tomorrow, the next day. Just I feel like
um,
as there's things that are there's going to be a lot more to say. Um,
yeah, there's. By the way, what's with the like the globe in the corner which says "What is a woman"?
I had that from actually two different streams. There was one where um, I was talking to flat earthers. I had the globe. There's something about globalists, maybe I don't remember where the globe came from. And then the what is a woman? Um, I created this with I was watching that Matt Walsh quote unquote
Oh,
documentary. What is a woman?
actually I've I found like a pirate website where I downloaded
Mm.
that video. I
Oh,
watched it
excellent.
actually.
Yeah, it's good not to
It's
give money to him.
it's I don't really care. It's it's interesting. Like I think from what I saw, like I don't know, I have a lot of mixed
Mm,
thoughts about it. On the one hand, obviously, there's if we're talking about transgender people, these are
mm,
human beings. They should be given, like, they should be able to get employment and
mm-hmm.
should be able uh, to be treated like with some base decency, like everybody else. On the other hand, like with the stuff around the children
Mm,
and surgeries, that's a little that's a more sensitive topic, and I think that like with kids, like kids should be left out for that at least for now. I don't know. Like I know that
mm,
in Thailand, that's like a thing. There have been they're even called lady boys there,
mm-hmm.
and that's been for longer. And the culture is it's more so a part of the culture
Yeah.
here. Like in the States, it's much newer. So
Yeah. I mean, yes and no. The history is really interesting. India also has like third gender. Um, indigenous Americans have two spirit, have different like third genders, and in America, it's something that's like existed for a long time, but it's been legally repressed. So like it's like
uh,
illegal to be trans in public until pretty
it's
recently.
weird.
Um,
I know being trans in public is one thing. Like that's yeah, I agree that. On the other hand, like the stuff around surgeries and how people,
mm,
I think that it's not the identity itself. It's
mm,
stuff around surgeries that kind of to me it seems a little. And to be honest, actually, a couple of months ago, I just remembered I've had somebody block me over,
oh,
and basically what I said was my thought that I think that, like I said, that these are human beings. They should be treated like human beings. But personally, I think that like there's how a person identifies, and then there's the medical stuff where, uh,
mm-hmm,
and the medical stuff like more or less immutable. You couldn't talk about like edge cases where there's people born
mm-hmm,
without genitals or with genitals or without arms and legs or something like that. But that's
mm.
not the defining factor there. Like these are outliers.
Yeah. I mean, it's important to remember. So when it comes to Matt Walsh, he doesn't know anything about the topic. I think he was on Joe Rogan and he was saying that he thinks like millions of children have got surgery, and they were looking. It was like maybe thousands. He was just like he just someone like him shouldn't be in the conversation because he's just a bad actor. I think there are legitimate things to talk about. There's like
Yeah.
medicalization of of identity, or there's ways that kids certainly can be over medicalized in in certain cases, but
Actually, one of the streamers here on Twitch actually discovered her
mm,
through YouTube,
mm,
and released a video where she briefly was on hormones.
mm,
She basically she was 18 and she seems to have some issues. I don't know what
mm,
they are. Whatever it is, it's not diagnosed, but she thought she was transgender.
mm,
And for a
mhm,
year, she took hormones, and she said that she had no trouble getting them. And afterwards, when she got off of them, she had no support, and
mm,
she actually complained that it's too easy get hormones, but you don't get any support if you try to get things back.
was she
And
working, like with like medical staff to do this, or was she just like doing this on her, like she was just ordering them from somewhere?
I don't know, I remember her throwing up around terms like, what was
Mm,
it? Something like Planned Parenthood. I don't know. Maybe
mm,
that's not related. I don't know.
yeah.
No.
I mean,
There was some
there's an argument
organization.
for like more medicalization if people are doing it right. So there's like, it's almost similar to like questions around like abortion. I don't know. I don't know if it makes sense to relate these things, but it's like
No, no.
you want
Was
enough medicalization where people are going to doctors for medical treatments rather than doing it on their own. So you want the support from medical system.
yeah.
You don't want people to be kind of pushed into it, but it is important to remember that in general these are edge cases. Children almost never get surgeries related to gender things other than
Well,
breast
it's the
implants.
hormones also can
Um,
be damaging, from what I understand.
yeah, but I think it's yeah. I mean, if you want to, take a take a break from talking about Israel sometime and talk about this,
Yeah.
I'd be happy to do that as well, because
Yeah, where kind
this
of
is a topic that I'm interested in as well. Um,
it's interesting, but I don't really know that much about it myself. I just think that from what I saw on the video, there are some people don't seem to make we don't make distinctions that should be there.
yeah, I would say I wouldn't take that movie as a basis for getting a kind of a reality on the situation. Matt Walsh
Yeah, no, I'm
is
not.
an extremely bad actor.
Yeah, I think that the only good thing about him is he's entertaining. He like I've seen a couple of videos of him on YouTube. He kind of tries to be like this, uh, like this old-fashioned hard-ass uncle or dad or something.
Mm,
Although he kind of comes across like very try-hard. And, like
yeah.
I have like my stepfather is like a very hard-ass.
Uh-huh.
Like, he's like an actual one who's very traditional, like
Yeah.
in some ways. But like, looks
Matt
like
Walsh
he's
seems more
trying
try
too
hard.
hard.
Yeah. There were some parts that I laughed, when he's just like he's like walking through and he's just like, what is a woman? He's in this like trance, and then at the end he's like in his basement and there's all these like mannequins, and I'm like, he's fucking lost it. I
I
started
remember
laughing.
at the end he's asked his wife and she gave an answer that I like. Uh, he asked her what is a woman. She said like a female human, something like a female human,
Mm-hmm.
which is like I would say that's not quite satisfactory. I
Mm-hmm.
would say that it's a human being with an X. What was it? Two X chromosomes.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, like the medically speaking, that is a woman.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, how the person identifies, that's up to them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think my basic like kind of social proof that sex and gender are different is that like, when I was a little boy, I was a male, but I wasn't a man. And then I
Sorry,
had
it's the
my
two Y chromosomes. I made a mistake.
or no, 2X is female.
Really?
2Y is dead.
It's yeah. I'm trying to look it up, and I'm just thinking, maybe what if I'm wrong?
Um, so it's like, you look at like a baby who's a male, and you don't say that that's a man. You're a baby, and then you're a
Uh,
boy, and then
that's
you're a young man, and then you're a man. Like those
yeah.
those social roles change over time, even though your sex doesn't change. So
Hmm.
I think it seems like obvious in the way. Even if you didn't believe in trans people, then I think
Hmm.
it makes sense to say that gender and sex are like useful separate terms. Like the only point of language, or one of the important parts of language, is to communicate things, and
Yeah,
sex and gender communicate different concepts.
yeah,
Um,
and also, well, gender is a more linguistic term.
mm-hmm.
Like in so many languages, things have genders. Like the
Yep.
in German, the moon is uh, is a he, and in Russian, it's a she.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
By the way, I found like a video which I posted, DM'd you on the Discord
Mm.
for maybe for later. It's
Oh, cool.
related to more to Russia, and like
Mm.
Russia seems to like their political pundits seem to be in favor of Hamas.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, it feels like sometimes countries are just going by like, okay, well, America supports Israel, and America's supporting Ukraine, and Russia's fighting Ukraine, so Russia's gonna support somebody fighting Israel. Like it seems like sometimes it's just like the obvious geopolitical things where
Yeah,
they'll just, if it's just gonna be like a kind of, split into like pro NATO, anti NATO will just define so much of where
hmm
different countries are going with their support. Yeah, I feel like nobody should be celebrating the fact that there's a war. That's just, you know,
yeah.
um, yeah, that's just horrible. Um, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say, do you have any final thoughts on things things people should take away from
I
like a mindset of what's going on right now? Um,
uh, I don't know. Maybe don't jump to conclusions.
yeah.
Aside from that, I don't know.
Yeah. No, that's perfect. Um, yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming to talk. Um, yeah.
Mhm. You're welcome. So,
All right. Take
sorry,
care.
I'm also. I think I'm also kind of starting to kind of zone out.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Like hour and a half, 2 hours of like, talking about some serious topics rather than
Yeah,
kind of shooting the shit about something.
yeah.
Um, yeah, it's tough. So, but yeah, thank you so much for talking. Yeah, let's definitely talk soon. Either,
Yeah. It was nice being here.
yeah. All right. Take care.
Uh,
Stay
well,
safe.
thank you.
Bye.